This is
Make It Plain.
Make It Plain.
MIP
With Masamela Matfumo.
Mark Thompson.
Make It Plain.
Get woke.
Do you ever feel like life is a never-ending series of lessons while you try to find purpose, meaning, and answers? I am Vanessa Fontana, the host of Figuring Shit Out, a podcast where we undertake self-help, coming of age, and healing. As I live my 20s in New York City figuring shit out myself, I've realized that if you spend your whole life trying to get your act together, you don't have a life. You have an act. On Figuring Shit Out, every Sunday, you get to normalize the journey of not knowing and be guided into living your life with more intention and ease.
Once again, it's Thursday, time for another edition of your favorite segment and mine with...
Favorite.
Yeah.
That's very kind.
Well, but I think over the years, this has been, even when we were on satellite radio, this has been the most listened to and downloaded segment. You're great, man. Everybody loves you. It's not because of me.
Oh, thanks.
I do the show every day, and it's when you come on, I get the most hits and the most downloads. So, you've been a part of this. Of course, as always, he is the founder of Civics with a Q, the host of the ever popular podcast, The Brief, and also the founder of the largest online progressive community, News You Can Do Something About. Markos joins us once again from Thursday Kos, fresh from an appearance on Meet the Press Sunday. Congratulations on that.
Thank you. I'm still still recovering from all the travel and the lack of sleep. But yeah, it's always an interesting experience.
So was you talked a lot about no labels? Was that kind of the primary subject of this appearance, to talk about no labels? And you and I have talked about no labels before and how it's going nowhere.
Yeah, there was two major topics. One obviously was a Republican debate, right? This is people still talking about that first debate, and they had Vivek Ramaswamy on the top of the show, and it's kind of amazing how effortlessly he lies. I mean, he was claiming, Chuck Todd had his book, and he's saying, in your book you called Donald Trump a sore loser, and he's saying, no, I didn't. And he's like, Chuck Todd's like reading the segments from the book. He's like, no, I didn't say that. I mean, it's crazy how politics has evolved to this place where admitting any sort of hint of being wrong is actually now that's the flub. And sort of makes me even think of what would things have been like had when the press told Hillary Clinton, the email, she would have been like, there's nothing wrong, and there wasn't. And she was advised to apologize 50 times. Like, had that ethos been in place, she would have like, nothing wrong with it. I mean, we found out that Trump's people were using their own private email servers, and nobody cared, right? Because nobody cares. That's a thing. Republicans made a thing out of something that nobody cared about, just like they're trying to do with Hunter Biden now, but with a lot less success. And so yeah, we talked about Vivek, and then we talked about no labels. So yeah, those were the two big topics of the show.
Vivek, I did see some of the coverage of Vivek on Meet the Press and over the weekend. It's not as if the Chuck Todds of the world don't know he's out of control and dishonest and whatever flash of the pan he is. Why even give him a forum like that? I mean, he's not real. He's not going anywhere. He's not going to win anything. Is it just ratings? I mean, because he's the car wreck, the disaster that causes you to rubberneck. I don't even understand why he's getting so much attention.
I mean, for the same reason we're talking about him right now, Mark. I mean, I don't think he was the story of the debate, and I don't think it's unfair to. I mean, had everybody ignored. I mean, nobody's talking about Asa Hutchinson, so he's not getting invited anywhere. So yeah, I mean, if you're the guy who you're nobody. Like Vivek is a nobody politically. He shows up, and you have the former vice president attacking him. You have Nikki Haley, the former UN ambassador, former governor, attacking him. You have Chris Christie, former New Jersey governor, attacking. You have people who were somebody's politically attacking this nobody. Of course he's going to get attention. I don't think that's unfair. Now, had the coverage been fawning, that's a different story. But Chuck Todd was it was a very contentious interview, and Chuck Todd was reading passages from Vivek's book, saying, "You called Donald Trump a sore loser," and Vivek just flat out lied. "No, I didn't." And Chuck Todd's reading this, "But you said," he's like, "No, I said that about Joe Biden." But no, this wasn't about Joe Biden. You said this about Donald Trump. No, I didn't. So it's actually kind of amazing how effortlessly he lies. Downright Trumpian, I would say, in his ability to just simply ignore reality, even when it is being pointed out to him with receipts being carried. It's a phenomenon.
It truly is. But see, I remember, even before the debate, remember Vivek, who was even more of a nobody, was brought in to do the interview with Don Lemon, the fatal interview with Don Lemon. And he really was nobody then. And so he does it. And that interview, I mean, Don obviously got frustrated with him. He pushed Don's buttons. And that was used to ultimately fire Don Lemon. And it looked really conspiratorial, like this was a setup. Don was clear he didn't want to get involved in it. Kept baiting him. So yeah, this guy, I just don't. I mean, how much you would think after this weekend? I mean, you had the debate, he got the buzz from that, but I just don't see why anybody. And I think even there's been criticism of some of the Republicans for giving him too much attention. I think you and I alluded to, I mean, Pence probably spent too much energy. I mean, you're a vice president. Why are you getting caught up in Vivek? He's obviously a Trump mini-me too, because he's just like him. Just was literally, like as you said, lie. Just make something up, even though it's in his book. So he's following the script. So hopefully we can get beyond that.
Chuck Todd asked me why did everybody turn their guns on Vivek? And his theory, which is not actually a bad theory, is that Vivek ended up being sort of a stand-in for Trump. And so they took out all their frustrations that they have against Trump on Vivek, right? It's actually not a bad theory. My response was that I don't think they planned on it. There was a leaked Ron DeSantis debate prep memo that actually recommended that Ron DeSantis attack Vivek. And it's ironic that he was the only one who didn't attack Vivek. And so my response was, he kept nipping at their ankles, like this little chihuahua was just like yippity yippity yippity, and they just could not help themselves because he got into their nerves. And one of the they had, MSNBC, the show, when they posted the clip, they headlined it with this quote of mine where I said, can you imagine Vivek, who admitted, like he's openly admit they never thought about foreign policy until 6 months ago, that he didn't care about it. He never thought about it until 6 months ago. And he sat there on stage mansplaining foreign policy to Nikki Haley, who was the UN ambassador, American ambassador to the United Nations. So the gal of that, and I just think people are like, who the hell is this guy? And so, yeah, they just could not help themselves. I mean, I assume for the next debate, they're going to be a lot better prepared to handle him. And actually, if you go to the debate, the one who handled them well was actually Chris Christie. And after Chris Christie shut him down, said he was ChatGPT, Vivek didn't say anything for like 15 minutes until he was called on again. Like, he was shut down. And yeah, I mean, almost you got to laugh at him because that's the only way to deal with him. You can't take him seriously.
I thought Chris Christie's line on ChatGPT was excellent. When's the next debate? Do we know yet?
It's like September 20-something.
Okay.
So it's about 3 weeks.
Now, and then also, obviously, you got into the conversation about no labels. So when we've talked before, and you said it on the show, you consider it a unicorn. What are they saying? What did they say Sunday about this ticket? As I know, Chuck asked them whether they were actually gonna put forward a ticket, but you get mixed messages from them. on that.
So the message that they want to deliver is it's what Pat McCrory, who's a former governor of North Carolina, he's one of their co-chairs. He's also the guy that signed the bathroom bill, anti-trans bathroom bill. He's a huge transphobe. He's anti-choice. Like, this is no labels. This is what they are. They're not a centrist group, right? They're a group of extremists. He sees himself as a non-extremist because Donald Trump endorsed his opponent when he ran for Senate last cycle. That doesn't make him less of an extremist. It just means that the other guy, Ted Budd, who's now senator, just kissed Donald Trump's butt better than he did, right? That's why he got the endorsement. So what they want to say is nobody likes Donald Trump, nobody likes Joe Biden, everybody wants another choice. That's their core message. And when I mentioned that in civics polling, and civics is even the most optimistic, 82% of Democrats support Joe Biden. They all laughed. They thought that was ludicrous because it's this Beltway thing. Nobody likes Joe Biden. It's like, we just sat and we actually talked a little bit about Donald Trump. And we're like, you just sat and said there's no room for a Donald Trump primary challenge. And he's got 70-some% approval rating amongst Republicans. Biden has higher approval ratings. And now you're going to pretend that nobody likes him? Like, pick a lane, like pick an option. People like Joe Biden, whether people in DC, whether the panelists from the American Enterprise Institute, which is a conservative think tank. Yeah, her friends don't like Joe Biden, color me shocked. Stephanie Murphy, who was the most conservative Democrat, lives in a conservative part of Florida. Nobody there likes Joe Biden. Big shocker. It's Florida. Like, Joe Biden's not going to win Florida. That does not mean that Democrats do not like Joe Biden, right? And it's this sort of bias. And I was throwing out the data, and they were just coming back with, I don't know anybody who likes Joe Biden. But the message then is, since nobody likes Joe Biden and nobody likes Donald Trump, no labels is going to provide somebody who will give people a choice. And this is where, I think where I really did well on the show. And it's hard for me to say, I did well on the show. So for me to say that, it's actually,
you did well, right?
It means something. Is I shifted that frame, right? I mean, I said, the premise is wrong that nobody likes Joe Biden, but whatever. That's who cares. The problem they have is that they have some poll that says 65% of people wish they had another choice, right? And I wish Elizabeth Warren was president. I mean, does that mean that I don't support Joe Biden? Of course not, right? Of course I support Joe Biden. Wishing there was a magical, and I call it the magical unicorn creature. Their problem, no labels this problem, is that they're selling the notion that there is a magical unicorn creature that can fulfill that 65%. But the problem is that 65% means that some people want Elizabeth Warren, some people Nugent. Some people want Mitt Romney. Some people want, I don't know, maybe somebody wants Joe Manchin. Who knows? So there is no one person, because this is all across the ideological spectrum, and nobody's ever going to sort of fill that void. So I started challenging, who's this person going to be? And what was really great is that Chuck Todd then said, yeah, Pat, who is this unicorn that you're going to be? And they don't want to throw names out, because the second they throw names out, the whole premise falls apart. And the Monmouth University did a poll. This was actually a great poll. They polled, first they did just Trump versus Biden, right? And Biden was winning 47-40. Then they said a generic third-party candidate. And then that generic third-party candidate only gets 30%, I believe. It was something crazy. It was 30%. And so it's 32 Biden, 32%, 32 Biden, 30% Trump, and 30% third party. Or even Trump might have been below third party. I think Trump was at 27%.
And I'm looking at it. This is the Monmouth poll.
Okay.
37 Biden, 30% generic candidate, Trump 28.
Yeah. So when you can create a candidate that people put their own wishes and dreams into, right? That third party candidate's Bernie Sanders. Yeah, I support that. But it's not going to be Bernie Sanders. And then they threw out a name that no labels had floated, which was a Joe Lieberman, John Huntsman ticket.
Joe Manchin, John Huntsman.
Joe Manchin, yeah. Yeah, exactly. Joe Manchin.
They crazy, but they ain't crazy enough to put Joe Lieberman at the top of the turkey. Okay, go ahead. I know that they ain't that crazy.
And suddenly, it's like support went from 30% to 16%.
Yeah, 16. Yeah, correctly. They come in third with Manchin.
Yeah, and that's without people even knowing who they are, right? And third party tickets always pull about double what they actually get in real life. Always. So that's not right there that like it falls apart, and they cannot come up with a name. So Chuck Todd was like, no, like give us some names, and Pat McCrory could not give him names. He's like, well, lots of people want to do it. He kept saying lots of people want to do it. I was like, no, they don't. Come on, no, they don't. Like, give us a name already. Who are they? And the thing is, that's I think what's the critical importance. If that DC Beltway think machine, right? Because there's like this group think, right? If they get away from, nobody likes Joe Biden and Donald Trump, and they want somebody else to like, who is this somebody else? There's nothing there. Like it literally falls apart at that point. So I thought I was happy to see Chuck Todd adopt that quote unicorn language, because it's a magical creature. It does not exist.
Looking for a fun way to win up to 25 times your money this basketball season? Test your skills on Prize Picks, the most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Just select 2 or more players, pick more or less on their projected stats, and place your entry. You could turn $10 into $250. Right now, Prize Picks will match your first deposit up to $100. Just visit prizepicks.com/fan and use code FAN. That's code FAN at prizepicks.com/fan.
Must be present in certain states. Visit prizepicks.com for restrictions and details.
Do you ever feel like life is a never-ending series of lessons while you try to find purpose, meaning, and answers? I am Vanessa Fontana, the host of Figuring Shit Out, a podcast where we undertake self-help, coming of age, and healing. As I live my 20s in New York City figuring shit out myself, I've realized that if you spend your whole life trying to get your act together, you don't have a life. You have an act. On Figuring Shit Out, every Sunday, you get to normalize the journey of not knowing and be guided into living your life with more intention and ease.
Well, let me ask this, though, because it seems to me that the potential people they're teasing about are people who seemingly would attract more of the Republican base and right-leaning independents, right? I mean, they're not, Bernie Sanders isn't an option for them. See, if it's Bernie Sanders, then that cuts into our side.
Yep.
But Manchin, do we know what Manchin's, has anybody ever looked at Manchin's national approval?
No, I haven't seen it, but he is clearly more popular in the polling that we've seen locally. He's more popular with Republicans than he is with Democrats, and that works for us. I mean, that's good.
That's what I'm saying.
For holding that Senate seat, but it doesn't parlay into anything national. There's one more point in that poll though, which is really freaking interesting. If you keep reading down further, they asked about the spoiler effect. And they said if this no labels ticket would hurt Donald Trump, how do you vote? And people still vote for that Joe Manchin ticket, right? Because they don't care if it hurts Donald Trump. But they ask if it hurts Joe Biden, and those numbers plummet even further. And then Biden has his biggest lead. It's a 10-point lead. If the argument is that third-party ticket hurts Joe Biden, because people do not want Donald Trump. They don't care about Joe Biden. Right. They do not want Donald Trump. This is where, like, again, so I even told Pat McCrory after the show, I'm like, I know, like, our like, move on and third way, they're arguing that he could cost Biden the election and give it to Donald Trump. I actually look at the data, and given their messaging, given their platform, given where the names are cropping up, like you just said, I actually think it hurts Donald Trump more than it hurts Joe Biden. So I'm not worried about them in a sense of hurting Biden. I just think they're freaking stupid, and I think it's a grift, and I think they're stealing money from people. But it's mostly billionaire conservatives thinking that they're doing Trump a favor. So maybe that's not a bad thing. But one thing we've seen already, we saw it with RFK Jr., is that he had a little bit of support, not a lot, mostly name recognition. But as soon as people found out that he was being funded by Republican donors and he was being pushed by Steve Bannon, his support in that polling fell off a cliff. Like That is an incredibly potent argument. It lands. It's not hard to sell when you have the facts with our voters, with Democratic voters. And so I'm confident about that. I'm actually, you know what I'm worried a little bit more about, Mark? Cornel West.
Really?
And not because he's going to get more than 3% of the vote nationally, because he's not. But because all he needs to do is take 10,000 votes in Milwaukee, 15,000 votes in Detroit, 20,000 votes in Philadelphia, and that could cost us just a sliver. But if a state is 50-50, a sliver may be all it takes to give it to Trump. That's the bigger danger.
Yeah. But I have a little bit of faith in the people whose votes he would attract. And I think people realize now the consequences of 2016, those who played around with Jill Stein. As a matter of fact, I think a week ago, the Hollywood actress Yvette Nicole Brown started a whole Twitter accountability thread with Professor Eddie Glaude. And Eddie got dragged on Twitter, even though he's apologized for supporting Jill Stein. See, remember, all during 2016, there were several things going on Morning Joe. Trump was allowed to call in from his phone all the time. Mika kept saying, butter emails. And Eddie was three of them. It was a trio. And Eddie was on there saying, Jill Stein. Okay. And I would dare say that if we look at the approximately 100,000 votes spread across 3 states that cost Hillary Electoral College, I'm willing to bet you can get 100,000 of those votes out of Morning Joe viewership who voted for Jill. So I'm going to be clear, those 100,000 people voted for Jill Stein. So you got, because otherwise Jill Stein's not getting any coverage other than the coverage I gave a little bit to her and her running mate before we don't see the European press. We got the press late that the Greens all over the world had unified against Jill Stein because they had seen the Putin picture before we had. I never saw it. Okay. Remember, we didn't see the Putin picture, I don't think, Markos, until October-ish. And we're like, whoa, where did this picture come? I mean, nobody saw it. That picture was seen 6 months earlier in Europe. I don't know why, here it was revealed or we saw it or somebody stumbled across it so late. Folks, we need to read European, we need to broaden our perspective on journalism, see what's happening in the world. So I hear you, but I think, Cornell's not going to get that. Joe and Meek have apologized. Eddie Glaude has apologized profusely, even though, he literally I felt sorry for the brother. He got lit up last week just for doing it. Literally torn asunder. And I've been fortunate. I'm revealing it now. Nobody jumped on me. I had a vice presidential candidate on, was it Ajamu Barak? I think I'm saying his name right. Had him on my show for 30 minutes, and it was okay. He's done a lot of other stuff, but so it was no big deal. But nobody said, well, Mark was a part of it because nobody knew who he was. But I don't see Cornell getting that type of airtime. And so I think
he's not. It's just a question. And Faiz, oh my God, I can't remember his last name. Faiz was Bernie Sanders' campaign manager last cycle. Anyway. And Cornel West was one of the campaign co-chairs of the Bernie Sanders campaign. And Faiz was on Meet the Press the week before I was, so not this past weekend, but the weekend before. And he told Chuck Todd very cryptically, he said, I hope he realizes that there are people trying to take advantage of him. He was basically saying it's conservatives spending money to boost them in order to undermine or to boost Donald Trump. And so he didn't want to come out and say, yeah, he's being used by right-wing interests. But he so I think he phrased it as, I hope he realizes that people want to use him. He was being diplomatic, but yeah, it was clear what he was saying.
I know Cornell, he's a friend. We haven't talked about this, but I also think that Cornell, and knowing him over the years, he does a lot of things for amusement, including self-amusement. I don't mean for that sound bad.
No, I respect that more.
Yeah, and the way he even presents himself, it's amusing about it. And so because and I have to kind of just deal with it that way, because if I buy into Cornell might really hurt us and cause Trump to get reelected, then I'll lose my mind. So I just have to know that, and I just don't. I'd be hard pressed to think that Cornell, if it really comes down to it, that he really wants to help Trump, even though he calls him Brother Trump sometimes, but he calls everybody Brother Trump.
Okay.
So it is something to look out for, and be concerned about. But so now, but back to no labels. You think it's grift, but yeah, what else could it be? Maybe they like to amuse themselves too. And then there's the intersection of Harlan Crow. Now, Clarence Thomas is disclosing today some of his financial stuff, but what's Harlan Crow? He's courting Clarence Thomas, giving money to no labels. Are these guys? Are they bored? What are?
It's. I mean, Clarence Thomas is easy, right? He's buying himself a Supreme Court, and he did so very effectively. So that part's not. No labels. It's a stalking horse. Yeah, it's. They're convincing. It's a grift to convince conservative donors that they can boost Donald Trump by undermining support for Joe Biden. I think that's their pitch. It's funny because at the start of the segment, on the no label segment, Chuck Todd asked them flat out about Harlan Crow, Pat McCrory, and Pat McCrory deflected, saying he got into a spiel, like a talking point, so he ignored the question about Harlan Crow funding them. But at the very end, when he was asked about candidates, he said, "We're going to be very transparent in the process for choosing a candidate." I said, "Oh, transparency, great! So you're going to reveal your donors?" And he was stammering, and he got bailed out because it was the end of the show, because he had no answer, because the talking point about transparency suddenly ran heads, it was a brick wall into no, we can't talk about who our donors were. And I've seen elsewhere where their arguments well, they're gonna get criticized. That's why we don't want to reveal their names. And Donald Trump supporter, small dollar donors, everybody knows who they are. Joe Biden's, it's all public information, right? It's all in public. So this idea that they're gonna be criticized is absolutely ludicrous. And so I do think it's a grift. I think they're convincing conservative donors that there is a path to undermine Joe Biden, and they can try to build a narrative. Again, I don't think they're going to get a lot more attention, because especially now, if really we're shifting DC's beltway thinking into, until they give us a name, who cares? Because the Mark, back in when Barack Obama was running for re-election, Democrats said they didn't want him to run for re-election. Nobody likes politicians. It's that is a truism. So if you're looking at a poll that says people don't like the politician, great. Of course they do not like the politician. They do not like the parties either, believe it or not. Big shocker. The question is there an alternative for those voters? And then there's a bigger, will they turn out to? That one matters. They will turn out for Joe Biden. Nobody needs to like Joe Biden for Democrats to turn out for Joe Biden. We're seeing that in special turnout election. It's funny because I mentioned that off camera. I said, you guys are acting like Democrats are in trouble. We're overperforming special elections 6.5. Well, special elections are different. They literally are not. We showed in 2022 that correlation between engagement with Democratic voters in a special election, when historically they did not turn out, and the actual election results. It is amazing how ossified DC Beltway thinking is. It is absolutely shocking to me that this isn't common knowledge, because it's simple data. We're not asking them to what your dinner table guests, my dinner in Berkeley, my household is 100% pro Joe Biden. Let's talk about that on Meet the Press. That was literally the level of thinking they were displaying. It was absolutely shocking. And I don't know why it shocks me, Mark. I mean, Daily Kos from the very inception has been data driven. I've always cringed that people say the American people believe. Unless you're citing me a poll that says that the American people believe something, you are full of it. But it is incredible how they just convince themselves that Joe Biden's unpopular, that special elections don't matter, all these sort of things that we know are not true because data. And so if we can get people to stop talking about Joe Biden and Donald Trump, people want a third choice. Yeah, okay, give me a name. And once you get to that shift, give me a name. There is literally Oprah might be the closest thing you might get to a candidate that would have broader appeal. And one, she's not running, and two, she's a black woman, so she may hurt Biden, but she's not going to be a consensus third-party pick that can win the election. That does not exist. It's going to be either Joe Biden or it's going to be whoever the Republicans put up, and that's the only two choices.
Yeah, I would agree with you. By the way, folks, Clarence Thomas just today disclosed trips that were paid for by Harlan Crow. This is his annual financial disclosure report. 2022, Crow paid for his travel to a conservative conference in Dallas. This from NBC News. In May of 2022, Thomas spoke at the event, which was held at a facility owned by Crow's real estate company. Crow also provided a return flight from a similar event in Dallas in February. Thomas reported. Thomas also said Crow paid for a trip to the Adirondacks in New York State in July. In notes attached to the report, Thomas said he flew on a private jet in the May 2022 trip because of increased security concerns following the leak that month of a draft opinion showing that the court was poised to overturn abortion rights, landmark Roe v. Wade. So he needed security, allegedly, from Harlan Crow, what he could provide because of the Roe leak. Who was going to do anything to Clarence Thomas? Pro-choice people don't have the reputation of pro-life people killing people like they have.
And you know what? If there's a real security threat, the Supreme Court has its own security system, security operation.
Right, of course. So, I don't understand that.
Looking for a fun way to win up to 25 times your money this basketball season? Test your skills on Prize Picks, the most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Just select 2 or more players, pick more or less on their projected stats, and place your entry. You could turn $10 into $250. Right now, Prize Picks will match your first deposit up to $100. Just visit prizepicks.com/fan and use code FAN. That's code FAN at prizepicks.com/fan.
Must be present in certain states. Visit prizepicks.com for restrictions and details.
Daily Kos, Civics with a Q, the ever-popular podcast, The Brief, as always, Markos, Melissas. Thank you, buddy.
Thanks so much. Catch you next week.
Thanks for getting woke and listening to Make It Plain. As always, perform an act of kindness on behalf of an elder or young person. Write a letter to a sister or brother who just so happens to find her or himself incarcerated. Offer libations to the ancestors upon whose sturdy shoulders we all now stand. And above all, give thanks to the God of your understanding by whatever name you call her and him. All God asks of us is that we give each other love. Thanks for giving MIP love. And please remember to subscribe and give us a 5-star rating. If all hearts and minds are clear, it has been made plain.